We offer a deep and warm welcome to each and every one of you on this day, acknowledging the gift of this day, acknowledging this land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people on which we stand to worship and to pray. My name is Beth, Hayward, and I'm minister of this congregation, and welcome you so warmly into our midst, whether you are here in person or joining us online, whether you are watching live or catching this at some other time. We're glad that you're here and hope that this day, when we will lean today into the theme of letting go and what that might look like and why it's an important spiritual practice. And so trust that as you show up, your hearts will be open to the invitation to let go of what needs to be loosened in your life. I'm going to hand things over to our Minister of Children, Youth and Families, Tama Ward, to light the candle with you.
Yeah, so a special welcome to any children or youth who are with us. We've been busy preparing behind the scenes for our regathering next Sunday, and we hope that as many of you as possible can come and be part of the annex or part of Godly Play. We are awaiting you. We did start our Burrard Street Story Guild and our youth group this past Friday. And our numbers were small, but full of soul. And it was a beautiful time together. In our youth group, we even had a campfire in the nursery, at least an imagined kind of one. But it gave us an opportunity to tell a few stories. And one of the stories that I shared with the kids was about a time when I worked at a church on the east side of Vancouver. And one of our elders got up to pray with the congregation, and he lifted up a $5 bill. And he said, I feel prompted by the Spirit that somebody in the congregation needs some money this morning. And so I'm just going to pass it through the congregation, and if that's you, then you keep it. And I looked out at the congregation and I thought, uh-oh, this is not going to go well, because it was not a well-off congregation, a lot of people on welfare, a lot of people on low-income jobs, and I thought it's not even going to get past the first row. So he started it around, and it went down the first row, and then somebody reached into their pocket and took out another $5 and added it to it. And then it went down the next pew and along, and someone took out a $20 and then a $10, and it made its way, wove its way through the congregation, and about 3/4 of the way down, a mother, a single mom with two daughters, two teenage daughters, stood up and said, I was short $375 to pay my rent today, and this will cover it. And she looked out at everyone and said, thank you. So that's the thing. When the Christ presence and the community of people who gather around it are in sync, when they're working together, we are met exactly where we're at. May you be so blessed today.
Holy, holy, Lord God Almighty.
having been filled up with a bit of music, you might be dancing at home. We're going to fill you in on what's happening in our community now. We have several announcements for you. It is, if you're watching live, you should remember it's the 19th of September, but this next announcement really applies to the 26th of September, so pay attention. I'm going to hand things over to our board chair, Karen Vanderhayden, to give you some updates. Over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. First of all, wonderful to be back in this space and amazing to hear these guys live. So I hope we're going to see lots of you next week. So my job is really to kind of inform you on what to expect when you come back to church next Sunday. So you may be aware that over the last month or so, we've been trying to figure out policies and plan to keep everybody as safe as possible. So we put out a congregational survey about a month ago, and we had well over 100 people respond. And so the message was really clear what we needed to do. So my job is to just kind of tell you what that is. So first of all, we know the situation with COVID-19 is very dynamic, so it changes week to week, sometimes day to day. So we've decided to be quite cautious here at Canadian Memorial, just to make sure that we're protecting the most vulnerable of our group. So to that end, what we're planning to do is formally reopen and allow fully vaccinated people to come back into the space. And that essentially means 2 shots against COVID-19. And so we're asking for a maximum, we'd like to open to a maximum of 100. If more people show up than 100, we will provide some space over in the Great Hall so you can still feel a sense of community and being together. There will be there'll be 2 entry points. So we're going to allow people to enter at the front of the church as well as the side. And so that's sort of new. We've been, over the last while, mainly been welcoming people on the side. There'll be greeters, and the greeters will be asking just to confirm vaccination status. So just be prepared for that when you come back. And as well, we're going to continue to have hand sanitizers available. There will be a lot more people in church, we're hoping, so the physical distance piece may not be possible to the extent that it has been. So the other thing that we're asking is, because of the greater numbers, that people be masked during the entire service. I know that might seem a little overly cautious, but we just thought in order to manage this situation and try to keep things as safe and easy as possible, it just is easier than saying, please wear them when you enter, please wear them when you exit, please wear them when you move, please wear them when you sing. We're just like, could you please just wear them? And we're also going to ask that in order to keep a safe distance from the musicians and the singers, we're going to have everyone seated not in the first 2 rows of the congregation. So that'll keep the singers safe, that'll keep us safe, and they can continue to do their thing the way that they have. So we're excited about that. We're also going to begin a social time. So after service, there will be a coffee hour, but there won't be any coffee. So it'll be a non-coffee coffee hour. It sounds a bit weird, but there you go. And so essentially what we're going to do is have people come over. We're hoping a lot of people will want to socialize because many of you haven't seen each other face to face in quite a long time. So we are asking that people wear masks. We're also going to put out a tent outside of the Center for Peace. So if people are feeling more comfortable socializing outside in an outside space, outdoor space, that will be there for you as well. And so no coffee and tea for the time being, but of course, as things change, we're hoping to reintroduce that piece. The children and youth programs are starting, as you know, and so we're really excited to have families back. All we're asking is that if you do have teens and they're going to be in this space with our older adults, our really most vulnerable folks, that just for the worship piece, and if you're joining us for coffee time, that those folks would also be vaccinated. But there will be more details about that on our website. And then the last piece is just to say, you know, the opportunity to come back together is so important. So many people have been longing for time together again in church. So we appreciate all your patience. We're going to try to do this with as much grace and kindness as we can muster. And There will be a lot of changes that will be happening, as you know. So just remember, we have an incredible live streaming option. Many churches don't have that. So if you're feeling more comfortable staying home and joining us in community at home, we completely understand. But if you feel confident to come back, we would love to see you next week. So we hope you will come back. More details, with a lot more details about the plan, will be posted on the website this week. So please stay tuned for that. You'll get a lot more details if you have questions. Looking forward to seeing many of you next week. I will be here as one of the greeters. So take care of yourselves, and thank you for listening.
And so some helpful information around that for some of you who are used to coming, a long time ago to worship live and in person. Our normal attendance was close to 200 people. So when Karen says we're hoping to see 100 of you back or open to that, that gives you some idea of just how full the space will be. And I urge you to make the choice that's right for you. And of course, we have gained members of our community who quite simply don't live anywhere near Vancouver. We're still going to offer this live stream and are so glad that you're part of this community. If you come to worship on the 26th of September, wear your orange shirt. The 30th of September is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and we will be acknowledging that in worship the Sunday before. Our office as well will be closed on the 30th of September. Choir and small group ministry will be resuming for a whole host of reasons. We're slow getting those up and running again, but please stay tuned for word within the next while on small group ministry and choir. Virtual coffee hour will happen today and every Sunday. The link will be provided in YouTube. And as always, check on our website to keep abreast of what's happening and to make donations. Even when you come back, we won't be handing the plate around for some time. So urge you, as you are able, to consider what you are able to give to this vibrant ministry that feeds your soul. Let's celebrate the gifts of this community.
When I wake up in the morning, love, the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without warning, love, bears heavy on my mind. Then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day. When the day that lies ahead of me seems impossible to face, someone else instead of me always seems to know the way. Then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be singing a lovely day, 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 lovely day.
I'm reading today from the 16th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. We listen in as the religious elites try to put Jesus to the test only to be put in their place. Next, Jesus bluntly tells the disciples what it takes to follow in his way. In the translations we will hear today, he tells them to embrace suffering. Other versions have Jesus saying you will need to lose life to save it. Listen carefully for a word or phrase that resonates with your life. A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. Some Pharisees and Sadducees badgered Jesus again, pressing him to prove himself to them. He told them, "You have a saying that goes, 'Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky at morning, sailors take warning.' You find it easy enough to forecast the weather. Why can't you read the signs of the times? An evil and wanton generation is always wanting signs and wonders. The only sign you'll get is the Jonah sign." Then he spun around and walked away. Later, Jesus went to work on his disciples. "Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat, I am. Don't run from suffering, embrace it. Follow me and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to finding yourself, your true self. What kind of deal is it to get everything you want but to lose yourself? What could you ever trade your soul for?" This is the witness of God's people. Thanks be to God.
Oh, the signs of the times. I want to talk to you today, indeed, about the signs of the times. And I kind of want to get a read on how I'm doing at reading the signs of the times. And I guess this is a bit rhetorical because I don't have a microphone to bring round, but I am curious if others are feeling that sense that the ground isn't solid anymore, that things seem to have unraveled a bit, that it's like you're treading water or you can't quite find your way to where it is you know you need to go. I hope I'm not alone in that. I acknowledge that I'm well and truly in the middle of midlife, so it might just be my own crisis. I don't know, but I hope. And you know how it is when you're feeling something, and then you go to make sure that it's legit and other people are feeling the same thing. So I've been scrolling mindlessly on social media, which probably is not also helping my sense of doom in the world. And in addition to the cute cats that I usually see on my screen, I now get all of these sort of self-help posts. And the intent, I'm sure, is to help us all feel a little better, like this one that is just, just a lovely, lighthearted, the whole world is understaffed, be kind to those that showed up. Like, doesn't that just make you feel, it makes you a little kinder. And then some make you feel like you've got a psychologist in your midst and you're going to learn something really smart, like this one here, that says the issue is that our surge capacity only allows us to adapt to major disasters if they're temporary. However, with the pandemic, the disaster stretches out indefinitely, and the emergency phase has now become chronic. Now, I don't know about you, but I am good in an emergency. I am like crisis. I am my best self in a crisis. I get focused, I make decisions, I draw on reserves that I didn't know I had. I actually urge you to go back and look at, our live streams from like a year or more ago. You will see I did not have on my trademark blazer. I was wearing like a superhero cape. I'm sure of it. But then things carry on. And I know there are some in our midst who don't do well in the crisis, but do better in the chronic. And those are the people whose wisdom we need to tap into right now. Things are different. And this idea that whether it's the virus itself that's become chronic, or let's talk in this place about the spiritual struggle that feels chronic, something has changed. And I love the way that the self-help educator and guru Brené Brown talks about a midlife crisis. And I think it applies to this particular crisis, chronic crisis that we're in. She says that it's not at all a midlife crisis. And I would say it's not at all a pandemic crisis, because a crisis is short-lived and it's definable. And the things you need to do are immediate and helpful. But the way she describes midlife is as an unraveling. So maybe that's a more useful way to understand what's been happening to us over these past many months through all of these waves. Are we unraveling? And is that a bad thing? Is that at all a bad thing, or is there something to be found in the unraveling? And the question becomes for us, whether we're at the chronic place in our own lives or as society, the question becomes, how will you choose to show up to the anxiety, to the uncertainty? How will you show up to what's happening in your life and this world, not clenching your fists, right? Not with white knuckles, not saying nothing can die. And so I completely understand that this reality that I found of the pandemic being like hard for me might not be your truth. In fact, maybe you've come to more clarity. Maybe you've had a sense of inner peace. Maybe you have rooted yourself in the practices that have filled you up in ways that you haven't known in a long, long time. But it's hard to say. As we lean into a federal election here in Canada, and this will be one of at least 2 plugs, be sure to vote on the 20th. As we reflect on the social structure of our world, things are changing, and we're feeling helpless in many ways and wondering what is the right direction for us in the midst of a climate crisis, in the midst of a world where the institutions that once held us are changing so dramatically. It's interesting. It's interesting to see the shift in people over a time like this, over this year. And there was an article in the Atlantic magazine a year ago that I really found helpful. In fact, I kept drawing on it in my own life to say, oh, things are going to be okay, we're going to get through this. And it was an article written by someone who names herself as a public theologian. Her name is Ekemini-Uwanshe. And her article a year ago, like last July, 2020, was there's no going back to normal. And so she, it's Black Lives Matter in the heat of it, and talking about how we can come through this pandemic as people who are better than we used to be, more grounded, more tender, more filled with grace. Well, this summer, The Atlantic published another article by this theologian, and this one was called, "We Could Have Changed the World." And here's what she said this summer. Last year, I said, if we grieved the world we once knew and radically accepted that we would never return to normal life, full of injustices as it was, then we could build a better future. But now, the world has not been remade, and there are no signs that it will be. Now, my job here is not to make you happy or to bring you joy, but it's also not to bring you down a rabbit hole of despair either, so I'm sorry if I've headed that way. Our job here, the reason we come, some of the reason we come, is that the answers we get elsewhere are not satisfying. And of course, you look at ones like this public theologian, people who get published, and you think those should be leaders. They should be able to offer us something real. And she's saying there is no hope. Our task as people of faith, not just mine, we have to all carry this, is to shed light in the shadows of our world and to find ways to do that. And so in this place, we turn to faith, and I wonder, will our faith have enough to sustain us in this time? Will we see the ways that it can? When we bump up against these monumental life challenges that tempt us to be drawn down into the abyss. The scripture before us today says, You must lose your life to save it. Or the way that Eugene Peterson translated it into the version that was read for you today, what kind of deal is it if you get everything you want and you lose yourself? Have you found moments in your life, whether this year, any time, but it sure is good to look at where you are right now. Are there moments when you are clenching? When you are clenching and your knuckles are white? Are there things that you need to let go of so that you can live? There's another way this has been spoken that resonates even more with me, this idea of dying that you might live, a way that doesn't bring in the metaphors of life and death and doesn't confuse us in that way. And it was spoken or written by a great preacher of the early 20th century, Harry Emerson Fosdick, like early 20th century, 100 years ago. And what he said about letting go is that you cannot hold on if you don't learn to let go. If you don't learn to let go, you can't hold on. That makes sense to me. You can't. I mean, our arm's only so big, right? So what are the things we are choosing to hold on to? What are the things that our spiritual practices need to lead us to lay claim to in our lives? Has this time in our life brought to the surface for you things that you need to let go of that maybe you've been too afraid to? Have you found those moments when you've reached your limit and realized life is trying to speak to me here? The Holy Spirit is trying to urge me. Those moments when it feels like you want to hold on as tight as you can, those are probably the moments that we actually need to self-evaluate and say, maybe this is something I need to examine in my own life. There's nothing better than a story to help us get clear on a truth that is deeper than words. And so I share with you a story. This is from a book by Parker Palmer. You know how you have a few books in your life that you go back to? Like, this is one of my top 5. It might not be that for you, but for various reasons, this is one of my books that I go back to again and again. And it's called Let Your Life Speak, Hearing the Voice of Vocation. And in this book by Parker Palmer, who's a Quaker and a teacher, a great leader, he tells the story in his early 40s. So he's now in his early 80s, right? This was a while ago. In his early 40s, he was entering into what he didn't know at the time was going to be a long season of struggling day by day with depression. And so, entering into this midlife unraveling, he heads out on an outward bound expedition, and he goes to some place off the coast of Maine that has it's something like Hurricane Valley or something. He said, if I was to do it again, I'd go to Paradise Island for my outward bound trip. So he ends up there, and he comes to a point in the midweek, outward bound, where they make you do all of these physically challenging tasks. And there's an exercise that he'd been dreading where he finds himself right on the edge of a cliff. He says it's a good 110 feet down. And he looks at the instructor in front of him after the rope has been tied around his waist, the rope that he's sure is way too frayed to hold him up, and says to the instructor, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, just go. Just go, he says. So Palmer just goes. He just goes over the cliff. Thump. 4 feet down, he hits a little ledge, and he hits hard. He hears the instructor from above. It looks like you don't quite have it yet. He thinks to himself, I guess I'm in no place to argue. So he says humbly, what am I supposed to do? And the instructor says the only way, really, to do this is to lean backwards. So to lean back your body weight as far as you can to almost like a 90-degree angle so that all of the weight of your feet is pressing on the side of the cliff. Now, Parker thinks to himself, well, that's just wrong. But, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to do my way. My way is cling to the cliff with my entire body like my life depends on it. So he tries his way. I'm not a rock climber, right? But you know where this is going. So, thump. Hits another ledge. and looks to the instructor and says, I don't know what to do. He just sort of almost hollers at him and says, just take the next step. So he takes the next step. And he leans back and he puts the weight of his feet on the cliff because his way didn't work. And sure enough, it starts to work. And every step down, he feels like he's conquering it. His confidence is increasing. He's got this. And then about halfway down the cliff, he hears the voice of the instructor at the bottom. Hey, Parker, pay attention to what's beneath your feet. And he looks, which is no small task because, he doesn't want to lose his footing, and sees that just below him is a big hole. Like there is a big hole in the cliff, and the only way to get through it is to go on either side. But he's only learned how to go straight down the cliff. And he freezes. And he sits there for what feels like an eternity until the instructor hollers up. Is there something the matter, Parker? I don't want to talk about it, he says. So this is where she says to him, I think it's time to give you the outward bound motto. Like put yourself in his shoes, right? That moment when you hear a word and it feels your mind has the chance to go through an eternity of answers? I'm going to give you the motto. Like he's thinking, where's the helicopter to save me? What is it? Anyone coming up here? Get me out of this. I'm going to give you a motto. And she says to him, if you can't get out of it, get into it. There's a motto for life, eh? If you can't get out of it, get into it. And that's what she says to him. And he says, as he's a Quaker, I mentioned, a Christian, for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant that the Word became flesh. That's in the opening of John's Gospel. The Word became flesh and lived among us. The Word filled his body. If you can't get out of it, get into it. And he felt those words fill his entire body, and he found his way around that deep hole and made his way to the bottom in moments. But here's where we miss the point when we tell a story like that. We tell a story like that like it is the conclusion. Like that's the moment of losing your life to save it. Like that is the epitome of arriving at some sort of spiritual depth. But do you remember at the beginning of the story that Parker Palmer told us himself that this outward bound experience was at the beginning of several years of struggling daily with depression? These stories of letting go, of finding the courage to walk through it when we can't get out of it, these moments happen to us in the midst of the struggle. These moments are what our life is made of. And so it's not to tell the stories of arrival, it's to tell the stories of how we made it through one small moment on the journey. Open and relational theologies talk about this as perpetual perishing, that this is the essence of our reality, that everything is perpetually perishing. Every moment is perishing. Every moment is a death into life. And our calling is to find ways to acknowledge those and to lift up those stories and to not tell them as if someone else out there finally arrived. What are the stories you have to tell about making it through when you couldn't get out of it? I don't purport to be particularly good at this. I mean, you might remember I already said I'm just good at the crises. But I know how to pay attention to the moments. My dad died about 6 weeks ago. And this is an experience that I've never had in my life. Like this must be like midlife arrival. Because I've had an experience, and I don't claim to understand all of my grief 6 weeks in. But one thing that has happened to me in the death of my dad is that the tension, the anger, the bitterness, the shame. I mean, it was a hard relationship. And with his death, all of the charge of those emotions has just let go. Now, I am not talking here in life. Don't get me wrong. This is not, forgive and forget. This is not let everything go and give up. This is about not allowing the things in our life that lay claim to us, the stories that are not serving us, to guide our actions. So I don't know. I mean, my main grief now with my dad is that I don't get to say to him, hey, imagine how beautiful our relationship could have been if we didn't come at it with so much tension. But that's a story that's perished. I'm really looking forward to what I can learn about how that tension was lifted from me by some act of grace the next time I show up in a moment where I want to rely on old stories that aren't working. What do you need to let go so that you can die? What are the things in life that you can't get around and you need to get into? I'm going to leave you today. Oh no, before that. Oh, I forgot the most important part. These are not just like memes on a social media feed. These words of letting your life go so that you can live, Jesus purportedly said them. These are important words. These are words from a wise teacher. These are like the kind of words, the kind of wisdom that only come from those who have done their hard work. These are words of one who went to the limits of his very own life for the sake of a greater love. It's the part I don't want us to forget. But I will leave you with a few more words to put in your back pocket or to share on social media to help others get through as you are learning to let things go. And I'll read them for those who are watching the screen and can't read for themselves. Don't give up this year. Keep fighting for the good. Keep showing up. Keep loving. Keep being kind. Keep trying new things. Keep caring. And keep showing grace. Keep on. This world needs you to believe in the good. May it be so. Amen.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see one in you, so we're gonna walk it out and move mountains. We're gonna walk it out. Mountains, and I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, when the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise you we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains, bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise
Yeah, I do think one day, Sabrielle, we'll just do a whole service of you singing that song. You know, I'm thinking this day, as we enter into a time of prayer, of all those who live in places where they can't pray freely in the way they want, or can't pray sitting beside the person they want, or all those who have no idea that there are faith communities out there that are trying to live a radical welcome. And so we hold all of those who haven't found a place or a way to pray as we offer our prayers today. Join your hearts together with me, will you? Oh, great lover of the world, you weave together the threads of our lives. You weave your very essence of love into that fabric. You see our frayed edges. You see the places where we are unraveling and can't catch up to it. It is gift that we are known and seen in your eyes. On this day, we hold prayers for all those who are laboring to bring life, laboring through some small challenge in their life or the greatest feat before them. We lift up those who are weeping tears of joy and weeping with a heartache that's gutting them. Pray for this earth, for her tears and her persistence, for the bounty of the season of harvest, that it might be a reminder to us of a resilience that all of creation holds and a calling to life that is within us. We pray this week for those who step up in leadership amongst us, and for those of us who have power to make changes. May we exercise that privilege to vote, and may we be guided by the values that root our lives as we check our X. Gracious and Holy One, we trust. We trust that there is enough to hold us together, that the broken places are not failure, and that the light will shine in the shadows, and we are part of sharing that. Hear these prayers, the prayers that come in the silence, and the prayers that come in the heartache, and the prayers that come in the joyful singing. And bring them all into your heart as we offer them. In the name of one who taught us to pray often and to pray with conviction. Join me in these words of the Lord's Prayer. Loving God, in whom is heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Let this be our song, no one stands.
looking forward to September 26th and seeing people in the pews and on the other side of the screen as we draw this circle wider. You know, I often stand here at the end and thank those who've contributed to making this service happen, and I probably don't have the right, you know, I don't make a list of who I remembered to thank each week, but this particular week want to thank our Ministry and Personnel Committee and our board, and particular members who know who they are, who've been working exceedingly hard so that you all can be welcomed back and held. And also a huge word of thanks to my colleague, my right-hand human, Heather Evans. You don't see her much, but basically she has her hand on everything here, and I really literally can't do it without her. So thank you, Heather. Friends, as you go into this week, be a part of drawing that circle wide. Look for the beauty and the gift in each moment. Celebrate the triumphs and look for ways to hold others when they are unraveling before you. Go into this day with love and hope and peace embraced in God, Creator, Redeemer, and Giver of life. Amen.
Today's a new day, but there is no sunshine. Nothing but clouds, and it's dark in my heart, and it feels like a cold night. Today's a new day, but where are my blue skies? Where is the love and the joy that you promised me? Tell me it's alright. I almost gave up on power that I can't explain. Fell from heaven like a shower now. I smile, even though I hurt, see I smile. I know God is working, so I smile. Even though I've been here for a while, I smile, smile. It's so hard to look up when you've been down. Sure would hate to see you give up now. You feel so much better when you smile, so smile. Today's a new day, but there is no sunshine. Nothing but clouds, and it's dark in my heart, and it feels like a cold night. Today's a new day. Where are my blue skies? Where is the love and the joy that you promised me? Tell me it's alright. It's alright. I almost gave up on power that I can't explain. Fell from heaven like a shower now. I smile, even though I hurt, see I smile. I know God is working, so I smile. Even though I've been here for a while, I smile, smile. It's so hard to look up when you've been down. I sure would hate to see you give up now. You feel so much better when you smile, so smile.
Thank you, everybody.